Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very, very well. As always, we have a ton of WWE news stories to get into today. So let's get straight into today's news and let's kick things off with the Velveteen Dream. Of course, the Velveteen Dream is something that people have been talking about since his release last week from WWE. Obviously, the controversial nature of his past 12 months or so with the company, the dramatic rise to prominence in NXT, and the obvious, I guess, destination for superstardom within the company just evaporates overnight with all of these allegations that goes against him. Took a while for him to depart the company, but he was officially released by WWE last week. Well, he's released a statement this afternoon addressing his WWE departure and the allegations against him last year. Now, the Velveteen Dream released a statement regarding his WWE release and the accusations made about him and his alleged inappropriate behavior last year. Now, at one point, the former NXT star, Velveteen Dream, obviously real name, Patrick Clark, which he's now going by, he was accused in March of 2020 of inappropriate contact with a minor on social media. Now, the first allegations he immediately addressed and stated that he was working with authorities to resolve the situation. Now, later during 2020 last year, during the speaking out movement on social media, Clark was once again accused of inappropriate contact with a minor by pro wrestler Joshua Fuller. Now, following these accusations, Clark ceased posting on social media, and despite a handful of appearances on television for the remainder of the year and repeated statements made by the likes of WWE executive producer of NXT Triple H that they had looked into the situation and nothing had come of it, these allegations were never directly addressed until now as part of this statement. Now, despite the Twitter for Velveteen Dream no longer being active, Patrick Clark posted on his Velveteen Dream Instagram story and addressed both his release from the promotion and the allegations made against him. Now, regarding his release, Clark openly has stated that these allegations made against him last year derailed all upward momentum he had in his career and did eventually lead to his release. Now, Clark also explained how he came up with the character of the Velveteen Dream and addressed his social media interactions with his first accuser, Jacob, and the interactions he's had in the past with his second accuser, pro wrestler Joshua Fuller. Regarding the interactions with Jacob, he stated that the 17-year-old was an aspiring pro wrestler and he was giving him advice concerning on how to best succeed in the world of professional wrestling. Now, regarding the leaked explicit photograph of Clark that was released following this conversation, Clark says the release of such a private photo and to label him as a predator is what hurt him the most, before vehemently denying that he was a predator of any kind. So it's a really lengthy Instagram post that I won't read out fully here. The link's in the description box below, but as I mentioned, they're kind of the cliff notes of what I just said about what he's saying. He's denying, obviously, the allegations against him. He's saying that it did lead ultimately to his release from the company and prevented and derailed any upward momentum he had within the company. Now, the Velveteen Dream hadn't been at many NXT televisions as of late. He hadn't wrestled since losing to Adam Cole on NXT television in late 2020. Now, he had been coming to open ring sessions at the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, and there was some growing concern in the company he was being set up to help coach classes for talent at the Performance Center. As is the case with all NXT talent, Clark has a 30-day non-compete clause. Obviously, if there's any more information coming out about it, we'll talk about it. Now, as I mentioned there, I'm not going to read out the whole statement. It's very long, and obviously there's lots of information in there that he's saying. As I mentioned in the cliff notes, essentially he details his interactions with these accusers. He details how these allegations and accusations made against him have derailed any upwards momentum he had in the WWE and have ultimately led to the termination of his employment with the company. And I don't think he's necessarily lying in the sense that they derailed any upwards momentum in the company that he had. That's true. And I don't think that he's lying when he says that they ultimately led to his release, because I think they did play a part in it. The Velveteen Dream situation is very, very confusing and very murky, to be honest. Again, and I always have to stress this whenever I talk about the Velveteen Dream here on the channel or anything like that. Obviously, you have to respect due process and you have to have the innocent until proven guilty mentality, because if you don't, then that's just, things get out of control very, very quickly. And part of the problem is when it comes to these accusations and these allegations, especially as part of the speaking out movement, like I said before, is that A lot of the evidence is anecdotal. It's one person's account of a situation versus someone else's. It's very difficult to prove in that situation, and because of that, in the past, this has warned off accusers from coming out because they think, well, there's no one's going to believe me. How can I prove my story? No one's going to believe me. They're going to believe the famous person. That's prevented things in the past as well. So it is a very difficult situation, and I don't think anyone will deny that. I think when it comes to the Velveteen Dream, as I've mentioned before, the evidence against him is quite damning, whether it's screenshots or audio footage, and that can be manipulated. That's true, but it doesn't look good. And when there is multiple accusers coming out, again, it doesn't look good. Now, I think what he's saying is accurate in the sense that obviously it derailed any momentum that he had. Once those allegations came out, it became very difficult for him to come back from, especially, as I mentioned, when there's multiple accusations and there's evidence supporting the fact. I do think it played into his release. I don't think it immediately did, because if WWE wanted to release him based off the allegations or incidents against him, they would have done it right away last year, and they didn't. They only did it now. I think there are other things playing into this. There have been reports of behavior issues in WWE. There have been multiple times where he's on television, gets pulled off of television, comes back on television. You've got the artist Ron, was it Schamberger, coming out and saying he's the most professional talent I've ever worked with in professional wrestling. There's lots of other things at play here. Now, obviously, when it comes to the statement that he's released, of course he's going to come out and deny the whole thing. He's not going to come out. These are very heavy allegations. He's not going to come out and say, oh, yeah, I'm telling the truth, I did it. He's not going to say that. Of course he isn't. So, I mean, it's interesting that he's broke his silence. As I've mentioned before, when it comes to the Velveteen Dream, do I think he'll work in professional wrestling again? I do, because that's the industry that we're fans of. That maybe he won't work on a major stage. I don't think he'll work for AEW, probably not Impact or Ring of Honor or anything like that. Will he work again in the professional wrestling industry? The answer is yes, because we have so much history in this profession of people that have questionable past or questionable backgrounds or allegations against them, regardless if they're true or false, and they always end up working because promoters, especially the smaller independent promoters, look at a talent like the Velveteen Dream, or Alberto Del Rio is a great example of this. Alberto Del Rio's got a pending court case against him with some really, really strong and heavy accusations against him. And again, I know it's innocent to proven guilty, and I know due process, but this guy's working against Andrade this year. And he's going to be involved in other matches. So it goes to show, if promoters think there's money to be made, and if you've got a name and if you've got a reputation, they'll book you. So I don't think the Velveteen Dream stops working in the professional wrestling industry because of this. Maybe on a major platform, that's a different story. But look, I don't know. And the whole thing when it comes to this situation, like we've spoken about before, is WWE's investigation about this. And they said it led to nothing. Well, if their investigation led to nothing, why would they release him just now? And why is Patrick Clark saying that these allegations are why he got released? It's very confusing. It's a really confusing situation. And look, we haven't heard the last of it. I have no doubts in my mind we have not heard the last about this when it comes to Patrick Clark and the Velveteen Dream and these investigations or these stories or allegations against him. I know I saw on social media, and I'm hesitant to really go in depth on it and comment on it, but I did see some rumors on social media, and we don't really tend to talk about rumors here on the channel, but I did see some rumors on social media last week talking about quite disturbing allegations, shall we say, at the Performance Center. And I don't know if they're directly linked to the Velveteen Dream, but I did see some reputable journalists saying, if I can get someone to go on record with this, we'll release it next week. So I don't think this is the end of this. I don't think it's the end of this, and I think there's more to come here. It's a very strange situation, and I think it's just the beginning. And it's going to be very interesting. But we'll leave it at that. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. Now, speaking of releases and speaking of the Velveteen Dream, because of course the Velveteen Dream was released last week, it's a new report is saying that WWE are preparing for new releases, possibly coming as soon as this week or in the very near future. Now, over the past few months, WWE has been releasing a number of its superstars. The reason that's being given, that the company has had to deal with some budget cuts and as such cannot have so many roster members, I don't know really what I feel about that as an excuse, because how come every year, and I understand people have to get released, you have to bring new talent in, you have to cycle talent out, and if you're not getting used or if you're just being paid to sit at home, all that kind of stuff, that's not good business. I get that. When it comes to when they go, well, budget cuts, it's budget cuts every year, and yet this company is more profitable than ever. It has bigger revenue streams than ever. So where are these budget cuts? What it comes down to, and this is why they do it every April, this is why the last 2 years they've done it in April, is because right before right after they release these superstars, they then have their quarterly shareholders and stakeholders investors call, and because they've got rid of all this talent, which is money and all of these contracts, they can then say to their shareholders or their stakeholders, look, we've got record revenue, we've got more profit. Why? Because we just got rid of a load of people. I don't know how people can always never see past that. Nevertheless, because of such budget cuts, we had the like of Kavita Devi, Jessamine Duke, Vanessa Bourne, the Velveteen Dream, Alexander Wolf, his contract was really expiring. Obviously, Drake Wirtz got released as well. All of these people got released last week, but it looks like more WWE stars could be heading out of the company in the near future. Andrew Zarian on the Mat Men podcast said the following regarding NXT UK talent. He said, quote, I heard there's maybe some more to come, some NXT UK talent. Now, if WWE does decide to cut the roster down for NXT UK, it will be the latest in what is, I guess, the spring/summer budget cuts, or I don't know what they call it, spring cleaning, who knows. Now, this would include, obviously, previous names just released as well, like Andrade, Samoa Joe, Peyton Royce, Billie Kay, Lars Sullivan, Chelsea Green, and many more. So possibly more names to come. Now, I don't think it's fair to speculate on who's possibly going to get released or anything like that, but it's worth mentioning that don't be surprised if we do see some more in the future when it comes to NXT UK talent. We'll have to wait and see, though. Let's move on to talk about John Cena. There was a report last week talking about John Cena and his possible return to WWE in the coming months, specifically to tie in with the return of live fans in attendance at WWE television and events. Obviously, WWE is going back on tour in July. The big announcement was made last week that they are going back on tour beginning July, was it 19? For the 25 city tour. That includes SmackDown, Money in the Bank, Raw, and that's going to be in the likes of Texas and probably some other cities as well. A big hurdle, obviously, when it came to John Cena's return, and the reason why he didn't return at WrestleMania this year was because he is currently in production for the Peacemaker TV series on HBO Max. Obviously, the problem when it came to WrestleMania, and a lot of people were surprised that he didn't show up at WrestleMania, was because he is filming in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. The issue was that obviously if he leaves the company, Canada, he has to quarantine for 2 weeks when he comes into the United States. He would have to quarantine for 2 weeks, then do WrestleMania, then go back to Canada, quarantine for another 2 weeks, so he'd be quarantining for a month. That would involve that the Peacemaker TV series being shut down in terms of production for 1 month. That is incredibly expensive, considering in all of these big productions, time is money, and you just know for a fact that Warner Brothers would not be happy with that, and they don't want that, and they're certainly not going to do that. There's also insurance liabilities and all that kind of stuff, so it was impossible. It was impossible for him to show up at WrestleMania, but this hurdle may be now overcome because according to PW Insider, and to be honest, we mentioned this on the channel quite a few times over the course of the last few days, the shooting for Peacemaker, the HBO Max TV series starring John Cena in the lead role, will be wrapping up production in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada on July 6th. At that point, John Cena will be able to return to the United States, making him available for future WWE dates. Now, I don't know, and you can let me know, the people based in the United States or Canada, in the comment section below, because I don't know the ins and outs of this. Will he still have to quarantine for 2 weeks? Has that been lifted? I guess now with a wider spread of vaccinations? I don't know. I really don't know. But it's certainly going to be interesting. Of course, John Cena last appeared for WWE at WrestleMania 36, where he was defeated by The Fiend Bray Wyatt in a cinematic match, the Firefly Funhouse match. Now, filming Peacemaker, as I mentioned, ultimately led Cena to decline to take part in WrestleMania 37 this year. Despite this, Cena is committed to WWE, recently being announced as the narrator for the upcoming WWE Evil TV series. In recent weeks, he has also teased a return to WWE on social media. I think it's inevitable. To be honest, it's inevitable that Cena's going to come back, I think, when it comes to July. Again, I don't know. I think the other important factor will be his schedule. It's the same as The Rock, really. If there's space in the schedule, he'll come back. But he's a very busy man. He's a very in-demand man. You know, he's very popular in Hollywood for TV and film, whether it's doing the Suicide Squad film or the TV series. When does the Suicide Squad film come out? August. So he's going to be doing press and promotion for that relatively soon, once we start getting into July anyway. Also, then I guess you have to think, does he have any other films that he's planning to go into filming soon? We don't know. Usually they're pretty shy about talking about that openly. Fast and Furious, when does that come out? Is that later this year? So he's going to be a busy guy. And it does depend on the schedule. So I think if WWE and John Cena can figure it out, John Cena, of course, he would want to be there when fans are back inside the arena for WWE. I don't know what it leads to. I mean, John Cena, is it just a one-off appearance on SmackDown? That's fine. I don't know if Cena really wants to do that, though. You know, does he want to just be there to welcome people back, or does he want to work a match? Does he want to work an angle? Does he want to wrestle at SummerSlam? If it's him coming back for one episode of SmackDown on the Friday, and that leads to a match at SummerSlam, that's different, isn't it? That's doable. So who knows? Who knows? But certainly it's a possibility. It's a bigger possibility than it was for WrestleMania, and I think that's the important thing to consider there. Let's move on and talk about Keithley. Now, everyone is still wondering what's going on with Keithley. When is he going to return to WWE programming? Keithley has been out of action since early February, and apparently he still isn't sure what's next for him. Responding to a fan's question on social media saying, "Dude, what's next?" Keithley had this to say. You can see the tweet on the screen there. He says, quote, "Good question. Unfortunately, only time will tell, my friend." Now, Keithley was scheduled to face then United States champion Bobby Lashley and Riddle at Elimination Chamber on February 21, but he was then pulled from the match due to injury. Now, in late March, it was reported that Lee was still not cleared for in-ring work, but was actively trying to get cleared. I think it's important to stress there as well, Keithley was scheduled to win that match. Not only was he pulled from the match, he was pulled from winning the United States Championship. Keithley was going to win that match and be the United States Champion. And we still don't know what's wrong with Keithley. It's an odd situation. It's a really strange situation, and Keithley... all we hear about Keithley at the moment is that he's frustrated. He wants to come back. He's actively trying to get cleared by WWE, but he can't. We don't know what he's trying to get cleared from. And I think Monday Night Raw would be in desperate need of a Keithley right now. I think it's a shame because not only, as I mentioned, that he was going to win the United States Championship, I think there's a high chance, considering just the sheer lack of top babyface talents to face Bobby Lashley on Raw right now, Keithley could easily be involved in the WWE Championship picture if he was on the roster right now. So on top of obviously the injury and not being able to get cleared and all this kind of stuff, he knows that he's missing an opportunity right now as well. So it must be incredibly frustrating for him. As a fan, it's frustrating. So I can't even imagine what it is for himself. It must be beyond frustrating. Now, speaking of Keithley yesterday as well, there was a rumor going around that he had been released by WWE. Now, this rumor was quickly debunked and was proved not to be true. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select. Fightful Select is their Patreon service. Be sure to check that out and subscribe. They are just a wishing well of information and exclusive news, insider stories. I know there's all this fighting on social media about different websites and clickbait and all this kind of stuff at the moment, but Fightful are a fantastic source. They really are. I'm a subscriber to their Select service. They're very, very good. They posted just debunking, really, the Keithley release rumor yesterday. It said, quotes, wanted to specify that talent and WWE officials have debunked any rumors to Fightful that Keithley has been released. So he's not been released or anything like that. He still wants to come back and still hoping to come back soon. It's just a case of whether he gets cleared or not. Fingers crossed he does, because as I mentioned, he's incredibly talented. I think any fan of Raw, WWE, whatever, want to see Keithley return, and so do I. I'm a huge fan. I want to see the Keithley that was in NXT return. I don't want to see the Keithley that was been presented so far on Monday Night Raw, because that's not Keithley. That's not the guy that was the NXT champion. That's not the guy that was the North American champion, first ever dual champion in terms of holding the NXT championship and the North American championship. I want to see that version of Keithley. I don't want to see the WWE Vince McMahon version of Keithley wearing the singlet and the weird shorts and having the crappy theme. I know that he's got a different theme and all that kind of stuff, but I want to see the old version of Keithley, and hopefully we get to see that when he comes back. I've still got my fingers crossed. Finally, let's talk about The Ultimate Warrior, because The Ultimate Warrior, it's Warrior Week, easy for me to say when it comes to documentaries in the world of professional wrestling. Obviously, last night we had the Ultimate Warrior documentary episode on Biography, WWE Legends. This premiered last night, as I mentioned, Sunday on A&E. And another documentary this week is set to air. It's going to be Dark Side of the Ring's Ultimate Warrior documentary. And obviously, they're going to be very different in tone, and one's going to be more honest than the other. I must confess, when it comes to the A&E Ultimate Warrior documentary or biography episode, I haven't seen all of it yet. I've seen the cliff notes on social media, what people have had to say about it, and I'm not surprised, to be honest, that it's more of a puff piece. I know they have addressed some more controversial elements of The Ultimate Warrior. A lot of people have been saying this on social media heading into it. I was saying it that certainly the really controversial stuff that Warrior said during his lifetime, and controversial, just, homophobic, possibly racist stuff, all that kind of stuff, they weren't going to address. Again, as far as I'm aware, they kind of did, but they've kind of been economical with the truth. Again, I might be wrong. I'll have to watch it. My plan is to watch it later today. But there was when she was promoting this documentary, this A&E documentary, Dana Warrior, of course, the Ultimate Warrior's widow, she was asked by a fan on Instagram if she had approved of the Dark Side of the Ring episode on her late husband. Now, Dana confirmed she had no part in the project, and they're pretty strong words about it. She said, quote, "I had no part in this project. Smut and filth does not rise to my note." Now, Warrior's first wife, his ex-wife, Sherry Tyree, however, has been interviewed for Dark Side of the Ring. The episode titled, quote, "Becoming Warrior." Now, Dark Side of the Ring has tweeted out the following synopsis to promote the upcoming episode. It says, quote, "In a meteoric rise to fame, Jim Hellwig, a.k.a. the Ultimate Warrior, morphed himself into from an aspiring chiropractor into one of wrestling's most iconic and polarizing figures, leaving a complicated legacy in his wake." And I think that's the best way to describe the Ultimate Warrior, is that it's a really complicated legacy. And you know, there's a ton of people, and again, Warrior was a little bit before my time in terms of growing up. I know, and this is the thing, a lot of people don't have great things to say about the Ultimate Warrior in terms of working with him, in terms of, you know, his abilities and all that kind of stuff, but he still, this day, is still very popular. The generation ahead of me loves the Ultimate Warrior, or loved him when they were younger. They were obsessed with him, and he was... You have to remember that his time on top wasn't that long. It really wasn't that long. And he was only the WWE champion once. And still, to this day, he's popular because of that. So obviously, he left an impression. To people, I guess, of my generation. We see him as this guy that, again, was very controversial in some of the stuff that he said, and came into WCW and failed, and had the weird match of Hulk Hogan and all that kind of stuff. It's a complicated legacy, and obviously the way his life ended was very sad and tragic, and especially after the Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, then he dies the next day. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. It's a crazy story. And now WWE kind of use his likeness and his name to, you know, do corporate PR and have the Warrior Award and all that kind of stuff. But his legacy is not that simplistic. It's not. And I think that's what people maybe don't like to talk about when it comes to, say, like the Warrior Award and some of the sort of advocacy that they do using the Ultimate Warrior's name, is that this guy did say a lot of controversial stuff. And it's like when, you know, Dana Warrior did she used the Ultimate Warrior logo to do a promotion of, you know, LGBTQ rights, and it was kind of like, well, if you listen to an Ultimate Warrior press conference, or that one where he did the talk at that college, that university, you would know that was very against what he was like at the time. And again, it's a really complicated legacy. And you know, I've been saying this about these biography episodes by A&E and WWE, that look, if it's a puff piece and they just want to talk about the good stuff and they just want to talk about the characters and maybe touch on the life a little bit, that's fine. That's totally fine. The WWE are working with these filmmakers to produce these documentaries, and that's fine. If that's what they are, then that's okay, because we know what we're getting. It's not a full warts and all documentary. It's a WWE version of the documentary. That's fine. I think where people start to draw the line here is that, okay, if you want to do a puff piece on Stone Cold Steve Austin, Roddy Piper, Booker T, The Ultimate Warrior, whatever, that changed when you had the Macho Man documentary, because it was a bit of a warts and all documentary, and they did focus on the relationship with Elizabeth a lot, which is, again, because it's real life. But when they focused on, you know, the Gorgeous George stuff and the drug use and, you know, the spying and possible violence and all that kind of stuff, was a little bit like, okay, that turned. And again, that's not a problem if you treated everyone else like that, but it did feel like there was a double standard when it came to the other documentaries. And maybe that's because all different filmmakers have been making these episodes, but you know, the Macho Man, when you had Bubba the Love Sponge on there, what's he got to do with that? What has he got to do with that? Nothing at all. And all this kind of stuff just felt odd, and it felt odd. And I think if the Macho Man documentary, again, like the other ones, was with a bit of a puff piece, no one would have had a problem with it, because that's what they expect. But the tone changed when it came to the Macho Man one, and it does feel like a double standard. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm really excited to see the Dark Side of the Ring. I'm a huge fan of the series and a huge fan of the work of all those guys. And I don't think they've done a bad episode, to be honest. So I'm fascinated to see it. I like them because they're real. They're very real and they're very raw. So I'm excited to see it. But obviously Dana Warrior isn't, and I don't blame her. I guess she probably thinks that there are going to be some things in there that aren't true. But That's what these documentaries are about. It's about getting people talking and discussing all these kind of things. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of the news stories spoken about today? The Velveteen Dream commenting on his WWE release, possibly more upcoming WWE releases, John Cena's return to the company, the update on Keithley, and Dana Warrior's thoughts on the Dark Side of the Ring episode on The Ultimate Warrior coming up this week. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.